Welcome back with a smiling face. Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. The Path of Strength. Episode 9. Chapter 87. Sky was trapped under several silver chains and she had open sores, burn marks, lacerations, and cuts littering her entire body. I rushed to her side and started to lift the chains from her as quickly as I could. Every time I touched the chains, I burned myself, so I fought through the pain of the chains each time I touched them. Once the chains were off, Sky began to stir. She tried to sit up, but was unable to hold her head up, no matter how much she had tried to. "Justin, Aries," she whispered as she collapsed back to the floor. "Sky, what happened?" Aries whimpered. "Calia, she was injured and I tried to take the majority of the pain from her, the poison, everything that they were doing to her, I was siphoning it through my body. I was hoping that if I could prevent the amount of pain she was feeling, then less of it would seep through the bond to you. I had disappeared while she was kidnapped because I was trying to protect her from the pain that I was in. She thought I had abandoned her, that was one of her last thoughts before she succumbed to the poison and passed out. I was trying to protect you, and now Cod is nowhere to be found." At one point, I had heard her in my head, similar to old times, but it sounded like she was reliving her assault. I tried to speak to her in her mind like I used to when she would have nightmares, but it did not work. No one answered me. It was like I could feel and see everything that was happening to her, but she could not respond to me. It is my fault this happened. If I was stronger, Calia would never have gone through this. I looked at Sky and shook my head. I grabbed her face with my hands. "Don't you blame yourself. None of this was your fault. You did everything as her wolf to protect her." I sat down next to her on the floor and gently placed her head in my lap. "She needs you now, Sky. The doctors won't allow her to wake up until you come to the surface. They have her heavily sedated. We can barely sense you on the other side, almost as if you had completely vanished. I was the last hope of bringing you home. She won't be able to survive without her wolf. And we won't be able to survive without you. I promise that Cod is not going to blame you for the pain and trauma she went through." I felt moisture hitting my thighs from Sky's face. Aries stepped closer and began licking her wounds. I watched in awe of how they closed the moment that he stopped licking them. "Well, that is not something you see every day." Sky stood up and I could see the tear streaks that were left from her crying. "Will you come back with us, Sky? We need you. We will be with you every step of the way and Calia will be grateful that you came back. I promise that we will do better to protect you from now on. You will not have to worry about going through this pain another time." "I will come back," she mumbled to me. I reached down and hugged her tightly, my fingers gripping her fur. I kissed the side of her face, accidentally getting some of her matted fur in my mouth, and she turned her head towards me and licked me. Ew! I cringed a little. I love our wolf counterparts, I really do, but I don't like being licked. 10 out of 10 do not recommend getting licked by a wolf. The feel of their tongue is weird. Not only that, but her tongue and her head nearly swallow my entire face. We started to walk out of the house. Sky and Aries were walking side by side. I walked a little bit behind them, trying to give them some form of privacy. I smiled slightly when I saw them together. They never get to spend any time together. Aries was whispering reassuring words to her and telling her that he loved her. My wolf is normally a big, so it is kind of reassuring to see him with his mate. I guess only his mate can bring out this side of him. He is, also, like this with Cod. Cod and Sky bring out the big mushy side of him. It is like watching him turn into a giant teddy bear. I never thought I would see the day that I would compare my giant wolf to a teddy bear, but alas, the day is here. We walked until we got back to the pack hospital. Once we entered, everything had changed. The room that we were in now contained our bodies, and I could see the people that were in the room when we left. They are transparent. It looked like Michael, Oliver, and Dr. Lee was in the room with us. Sky, are you ready? I asked her. I watched as she nervously looked at Calia's sleeping body. All you have to do is step into it, then I will handle the rest. She looked at me and I watched as she gulped audibly, causing Aries to nuzzle her and he licked her neck. She turned towards him, nuzzling him, before she stepped into Calia. I looked at Aries and smiled. We did it, buddy, now it is our turn. Aries smiled at me and then stepped into our body and I quickly followed him. Now all there was to do was to wait for Dr. Lee to wake us up. We were floating in what felt like nothingness for what felt like hours. Slowly, I could feel consciousness returning. I slowly opened my eyes, squinting at the harsh, bright lights of the hospital room. You did it! Dr. Lee exclaimed as I slowly sat up and looked around the room. We saw Catalia's eyes burst open, glowing brighter than we thought possible. I nodded my head and collapsed back on the table. That was a lot of work, but I am glad it worked. How long do you think it will be before she wakes up? I estimate that she should wake before the end of the night. She was already showing brain waves after Sky pushed forward. The brain waves are increasing by the minute. Just remember, that when she wakes, she might be confused. She will be sore since her body has not moved in a while, she might be ravenous, and unless we are able to time it perfectly, then she will go back into her heat almost immediately. To make it clear, she should not have any form right now. Give her at least 12 hours before you try and allow her heat to come again. I know that it will be painful the longer we prolong it, but I would like her to be healthy and safe, and the only way for this will be to allow her body the time it needs to recover. Do you understand the doctor's orders? I wanted to laugh. I cannot believe that she thinks that I would do anything to harm Calia. I was kind of irritated with her, assuming that I could not keep it in my pants. I mean, yeah, typically with normal mated wolves, they are usually constantly. Usually, when you see them, they have some parts of their body connected. I remembered when one of my buddies had found his mate. I walked into the laundry room, with the intent of doing some laundry, but that went out the window the moment I caught them on top of one of the washers. I felt as if I needed to bleach my eyeballs. With Calia, though, once I learned of her past, I knew that I had to approach this cautiously, for fear of damaging my chances with her. So, I waited. She definitely made me wait too. I never blamed her though. I knew her past and what it entailed. I know Lee probably did not mean anything by it, but it still irked me that she assumed that I was just any typical male, who wants to get him wet. Of course. I understand. I would not do anything that would jeopardize my mate's health. I am perfectly capable of waiting. I mean, you do know how long I have actually waited for her, right? Nearly 3 years before, we marked and mated each other. I can wait a couple hours or even days. After I finished speaking, I realized how harsh I sounded. Look, Doc, I understand what you are saying. I really do. I just took offense to it. Not the fact that I could not have S*X with my mate, but the fact that you assumed I would not be able to hold off on getting me wet. I waited years for her to trust me and allow me into her life and her heart. I would never do anything that would intentionally harm Kat or jeopardize my future with her. I love her too much to do that. I looked over at Michael, seemingly forgetting that he was in the room, and realized that he had the biggest grin on his face. I knew he wanted to laugh at me for taking offense to the doctor, but I think the past week has been nothing but for me, and I have hated sitting here waiting for her to wake and then to feel as if someone is judging me or making assumptions about what I would do when she wakes. I have been wanting to take my aggressions out, but the only way I want to do that is on the face of one of those rogues, but I do not want to leave her until I know that she is awake, safe, and healthy. Instead, I have stayed here. Day in and day out. Luckily, they put her in a room that had a shower, so that I could take a shower at least. I glanced over at Lee, realizing that she had never responded after I spoke to her so harshly. She was looking at me with sympathy. Dr. Lee cleared her throat before speaking, "Justin, I did not mean to offend you. I should have been more considerate of the fact that your bond with Calia was vastly different from how typical mated pairs are. However, this is, also, a conversation that I would have with anyone, whether they were or were not mated. Anyone that I would deem or have knowledge of them being active. I am tremendously sorry if I have unintentionally upset or offended you." I shrugged my shoulders. "It is all good, Lee. I was just upset. It has been a long and stressful week and I am ready for it to be over. I am ready to enjoy life with my mate and for us to finally be happy and settled, without all this added. You know, I have not been sleeping well either, so that has not helped my grumpiness. The other day, when my mom was here, she told me I was being a class A, that needed to get his attitude in check. They both laughed at me. I guess it would be alright if you were like this to your mom as well." I looked over when I heard movement from Calia's bed. Her fingers were twitching, her chest was rising and falling faster, and I could hear her heartbeat quickening. I reached over and grabbed her hand and placed a gentle kiss on it, before placing another kiss on her forehead. We talked for another few hours and just as Michael was about to leave for the night, I heard rustling in her bed again and when I looked over, I noticed that her eyes were open. Chapter 88. Calia's POV. Darkness. I have been surrounded by darkness for what feels like eternity. Sometimes I can feel sparks. I feel the sparks traveling on what I am assuming is my skin. Why are there sparks? What is causing them? I pondered this for days. I feel like I am not whole, like I am missing something. I am in a deep abyss with no way out. I am drowning. I have been walking for what feels like ever. I have been passing these big, black doors and I had thought that they would be my way out. No, instead, I have learned that these doors lead me to my deepest, darkest nightmares and fears. It was like I was drowning, fighting for air to breathe, but I was not able to reach anything. How do I get out of here? How do I figure out what I am missing? There is a man that kept reappearing in some of what I am assuming are my fears. I can tell that he is someone that I don't want to lose, but who? I don't recognize him. Days. Days I have been here, searching for some type of sanctuary in this never-ending abyss. All of a sudden, I saw a bright, shining light appear ahead of me. I rushed towards it and came to a staggering halt when I realized that it was coming from a golden door that was not there before. The door was giant. At least 7 feet tall. It had swirly designs done in a glittering silver. I am scared to open the door. Every other door that I have passed seems to lead me to a nightmare. What if this one is no different? What is the worst that could happen? What more memories can you haunt yourself with? Come on, Calia, you can do it. Stop being a chicken. Yes, I know, I hyping myself up. Whatever works though, right? I took a deep breath and then opened the door, scared to see what was beyond that door. I step inside the room and I am suddenly hit by all the memories that I was missing. Justin. Sky. Oliver. My parents. My brothers. My pack. Everything hit me wave after wave. I was ecstatic. I remembered everyone. The sparks must be from Justin. Suddenly I was sad, thinking about he must be going through right now. I remembered when he was in the hospital and I thought I was losing him. I was out of my mind. I hope that he isn't like that. Miss me? I heard a voice call from deep inside the room. Sky. I ran to her voice and I found my wolf standing there in all her glory. She had the biggest wolfy grin on her face. I was ecstatic. I missed her. She was part of the missing piece, the other part, I can't have yet. I sighed internally. I missed Justin. I want out of here. I want to go back to my mate. How do we leave here, Sky? I whispered to her. Simple, she exclaimed. You allow me to do all the work. I promise, I will have us out of here in no time. Suddenly, she was gone. In place of Sky, though, I was beginning to hear voices. Voices that I thought I would never hear again. Justin. Michael. Dr. Lee. I sat here and listened to them talk. Occasionally, I would have the need to move my fingers or toes, but the moment that I moved, sparks would immediately shoot up my arm. Oh, how I have missed these sparks! You never know what you are missing until you do not have it, or at least that is how I feel about my mate. I never thought about how I truly felt without him until I nearly lost him. Now, I cannot imagine going on without him. I love him and I want to spend the rest of my life with him. A light. There is a light shining. The light was too bright, so I closed my eyes, hoping that the brightness would go away or dim. When I opened my eyes, I heard gasps from around the room. I blinked and realized that I was staring at the ceiling in the hospital. Someone rushes to my side and takes my head. Sparks rush over my skin, creating a euphoric feeling. Goddess, I have missed this. I looked over and saw Justin's smiling face. He had tears in his eyes and I watched as the tears slowly started rolling down his cheeks. I reached up and gently touched his face with my pointer finger, using it to swipe away his tears. He missed you, Caught. Sky whispered in my head. Sky. I have missed you. When you left, I thought I was imagining things. I was so lonely. I know. I am sorry that I had to leave you. I was trying to protect you from the pain that I was in when I took your pain, so that you would last longer against them. I did not want to leave you, you were so strong, Calia. I saw everything those bastards did to you and I was so incredibly proud of you. You stood your ground and you did not take you. You have changed so much from the young girl that you were when we first shifted. I am happy to call you my human. She finished and I watched as she wagged her tail at me. This girl is so silly sometimes, but I would not change her for the world. I stopped my internal conversation with my wolf to look at Justin, who still had tears streaming down his face. He leaned down, placing his forehead against mine. I love you, my queen. Thank you for returning to me, he whispered, his voice cracking at the end. I love you, my king. Thank you for waiting for me. Can you promise me that we will stop doing this to each other? I don't know if I will be able to handle it if you die or nearly die again. /deal, but only if you agree not to do it to me again. This past week has been for me, waiting for you to wake up and return to me. Instead of responding, I pulled his neck back down and brought my lips to his. I moaned when his lips touched mine. I enjoyed the feel of his soft, plump lips against mine. Our lips moved against each other in a song that was as old as time. He wrapped his arm under me and pulled me into a sitting position and gently lowered himself to sit next to me. His tongue brushed against me, requesting entry. Once I allowed him entry, our tongues danced with each other, both fighting for dominance. Someone cleared their throat from behind Justin. I forgot that we were not alone. We slowly broke apart, both of us breathing heavily. He relaxed on the bed, pulling me against him. His arm wrapped around me and was gently stroking my arm. I looked at the other two people that were in the room and I felt my face turning red. Michael started laughing at my red face. I mumbled under my breath. I can't wait for you to find your mate. Just remember karma, it is going to come for you. I huffed, which only made him laugh harder. Anyway, Dr. Lee began with a smile in her voice. How are you feeling, Calia? I tested out the movement in my joints and realized how still I am. I moved my right arm and I heard the crack as my bone popped. I cringed a little, hating the sound of my bones popping. I am all right, I guess. My joints hurt and it hurts to move certain parts of my body. She nodded her head, as if she was expecting that answer. That is to be expected. You have been out for a week and then, before that, when you were being held captive. I cannot imagine that you were moving a lot then either. A few rules until you have completely healed. Your heat has still not been completed. We have been constantly giving you heat suppression pills. When your next heat comes, it will, pardon my French, but you will have to go through it. Unfortunately, we have given you the last pill that I feel comfortable giving you. Those pills can have negative effects, including affecting the reproductive system. However, you cannot have any form of activity for the next 12 hours while your body rests. The unfortunate part is, I do not know if the heat will hold off for 12 hours. I did give you a double dosage about 5 minutes before you woke up, so hopefully that does us some good and keeps it at bay. I am sure your mate is tired of fighting instincts and fighting the other males and some females that are currently in the hospital. I must say, the smell of your heat is highly potent. At one point, we boarded some of the hospitals because it was reaching warriors and other passing pack members. Poor Justin had to take care of them. Luckily, Michael and Elijah were able to help him. Next, no other extracurricular activities. I know you are eager to deal with some of the rogues that were captured, but you are not doing it in your state. It would probably be best if they waited until you were no longer in heat. Lastly, please force your mate to eat something and take care of himself. He has barely eaten, only showers when forced, has not left this room since you have been here, and he does not sleep. He has been driving us crazy with his attitude. I chuckled at the last part. I glanced up at Justin and whispered, have you been a little bit of an A*E? He looks down, slightly embarrassed, and rubs a hand on the back of his neck. Maybe just a tad bit. Mom told me I was being a. I am pretty sure that was the nicer of the names that she called me. Dr. Lee interjected again, now, I am going to do a quick check-up on you, then we will allow the two of you time alone. Remember what I said. No XX is bad for you at the moment. She paused, before deciding to add something more as an afterthought, don't forget to contact both of your families and your friends. They have been worried sick about you. Every day they have been asking me about you and what your prognosis was. Go ahead and put them out of their misery. That was how the next 30 minutes went. Dr. Lee was hovering over me, doing her checks and Justin refusing to budge. The only bright side was that she had removed the 4 and the other various wires that were attached to me. Chapter 89. It was now an hour later and everyone had finally left the room, leaving just Justin and I. Dr. Lee had spent a great deal of time taking my vitals and she was trying to double-check and make sure that the heat suppression pills had not had any lasting effect on me. I have had about 25 of those pills since the day that I took the first one. That was a lot. The pills contained a high, concentrated dose of monk's hood, belladonna, and liquid toxiflower. While using the potions in moderation is all right, the more the pills are used, the worse the lasting effects are. Currently, I am pretty well. She made Justin and everyone leave the room, much against Justin's will, while she talked to me about the effects of what the pills could do to me. She did not know what our plans were for starting a family, but told me that it would not be wise to take any more for fear of it causing harm to my reproductive system. She, also, made a note to tell me that she had checked to see if I was pregnant when I was brought in, just to make sure. Luckily, I was not pregnant. Don't get me wrong. I eventually want to have a family with Justin, but it is too soon. We had just finished mating and we had barely had any time just to be with each other. Plus, Justin and I never discussed the possibility of children and whether he even wanted to be a father. Once we had finished that conversation and she finished checking my reproductive organs, which, by the way, I really do not recommend. She had to get an ultrasound of my uterus to make sure that everything was intact as it should be. My problem was with the wand that she shoved in me. It was not that it truly hurt, but it was uncomfortable. She had allowed Justin to come back into the room and told Michael that he could come to say goodbye, but that I needed to get some rest after the recent adventures I had had. She even made him promise to not tell anyone that I had woken up yet. She reminded him that he should lie solely with me, whether he liked it or not. I couldn't stop myself from thinking about those rogues and the fact that they were in my pack, or the fact that I still don't know who the traitors were. I know Dr. Lee said that I should not be moving, or interrogating, or torturing anyone, but it would be just what I needed to keep my mind off the raging turmoil that is in my head. Now I was lying on this uncomfortable hospital bed curled up in Justin's arms as he stroked my back. "How are you feeling, my queen? You seem as if you have a lot on your mind," he whispered to me. I smiled to myself. Of course, he has always been able to pick up on my mood, even when he barely knew me. I guess maybe that was why Selene paired me with him. I was just thinking about the rogues, and the traitors that we have yet to identify. He squeezed me a little tighter. I don't want you worrying about those bastards. I will handle them. They will never see the light of day again. The king has already given us permission to execute and he said that his guardian will oversee the execution. Before they get executed, I will make them regret the day that they ever laid their greasy hands on anyone. I closed my eyes as I felt the familiar sensation of my eyes welling with tears. As soon as I shut my eyes, I felt the first drop of wetness touch my cheek. I don't know what's wrong with me. I should be happy they have been captured, right? I mean, I am. Don't get me wrong. I want those bastards to burn in hell. Maybe it is just the realization that this is almost over and then we can all move on with our lives. I can finally take my place as alpha and live a happy life with my mate and pack. Maybe we will even have a couple of kids running around. I started picturing what it would be like to be parents and have a miniature Justin running around the pack house. Those kids would be super cute. Justin pulls my face up to his and swipes away the tears that managed to escape my eyes with the pad of his thumb. "Hey," he gently whispers, "I won't let anyone ever harm you again, even if that means that you are glued to my side until you are comfortable being on your own." I giggled. "Baby, I think that would be unnecessary." He shrugged his shoulders and simply stated, "I would like you to be comfortable and if this is the only thing that I can do to make you comfortable, then so be it." He looks down at me before continuing, I much rather be by your side anyway, it is a win-win in my eyes, he finishes nonchalantly, shrugging his shoulders. I giggled at him. Of course, he would say something like that. This was how our night continued. We lay on the lumpy hospital bed and we cuddled while talking about our hopes and dreams for the future, both of us making sure to stay clear of the topic at hand. Neither one of us wanted to talk about the rogues, what I went through when they held me captive, or about the traitors that were in our pack, biding their time. It was now mid-morning and the doctor had just finished doing her check on me. She officially gave us the all-clear to allow my heat to come on. She told me that they have alerted everyone that is normally in the pack house that it will be off-limits the minute that I enter. The whole place was going to go into lockdown, complete with the roller shutters. My father learned really young when my mother went into her heat. He did not really have a safe place for them where they would not be attacked by various pack members that were not able to resist the heat. The thing that makes the heat worse for the women or even the unmated pack members is the rank of the females. If the female has rank, then their heat is horrifying. It can attract anyone, even from miles away. It has been said that one time a female that was born from an alpha heat was so bad that it was attracting rogues from several miles outside of their pack borders. It was after my mother's first heat, my father decided to have a remodel done on the pack. Every pack member's house came with roller shutters that allowed us to trap everything, including scents inside. The roller shutters even come in handy during severe weather or attacks/invasions. He then equipped the pack house with the same equipment, especially for any of the newly mated warriors, or in my case, Alpha, that had their heats. The only thing was usually to let the Alpha or Luna know, even if it was a quick mind link to inform them, so they could make sure that the pack house was cleared up to a certain area. The only difference is that in the pack house, the equipment that we used can be blocked off by floors. The doors that lead to each floor are equipped with metal grates and roller shutters that allow us to block everyone off by floor, rather than shutting the entire pack house down, since there are many pack members that rely on the pack house for a variety of functions. Currently, we were waiting for the discharge papers from the doctor and my father was on his way to speak to me. He wanted to talk before I locked myself away, essentially, as Michael put it, to get FKD. The door to the room opened and my family walked in with the king and the Beta's family. I guess it is a good thing we were decent, Justin, I said sarcastically. None of you know how to knock anymore. My mother and father had at least the common decency to look bashful. Oliver, on the other hand, said, at least then we would have a free peep show. We need something to liven everything up around here. Michael and Elijah started laughing, the king was trying to hide his laugh. Beta Damien smacked Oliver in the head and told him to knock it off, and my mother scowled at him. Instead of being upset or shocked by what Oliver had said, Justin said unapologetically, if you wanted a free peep show, all you had to do was ask. I am sure Calia and I could have come up with something for you. I felt my face heating up and everyone laughed at my reaction. My father cleared his throat, anyway, the reason we are here. I know this is the last thing you wanted to talk about before your heat began, but we need to get the topic out of the way. Do you remember anything the rogues said about the traitors? Did they give you anything that could have been used to identify them? We have tried interrogating the rogues and King Lucas has tried using his authority, but because they are rogues, his authority and aura are not as powerful to them. They have one demand before they talk, but we have refused them so far, my father finished quietly. I got the feeling I knew what they had wanted. What was it the rogues were demanding for their cooperation? My father was looking uncomfortable and had tried to change the topic back to his original question, about the traitors. The king cut him off, Alpha Michael, she has a right to know about what they are demanding. It advertently affects her. My father sighed and looked at me and then Justin. Justin, you need to keep your head when I say this. Remember that we have already turned down their pleas and their bargains. He paused for a moment, as if he was contemplating how to word it. Well, the first demand was from what we have gathered is the youngest. He said they will only speak to us if you agree to have intercourse with the two of them. I could feel my face blanching and Justin's rising anger. If this was a cartoon and he was a cartoon character, then he would have steam billowing from his ears. Justin growled loudly, his arms tightening around my torso. Absolutely not. Not in a million years. Finding out who a goddess traitor isn't worth her sanity, mental health, or my mate's body. She is not some cheap whore you can sell out for answers. I will get the answers my own self. I turned on the bed, pulling myself into his lap, wrapping my arms around his neck. His arms instinctively wrapped around my waist, holding me to him. I could feel he was shaking with anger, to the point I could feel his body temperature increasing as if he was about to shift. That does not even take into account everything that I can hear Ares saying through our link. I leaned my forehead against his. Calm down. You and I both know they turned down their offers. They would never have considered doing something that would put me in harm's way. Let's hear the rest of what he has to say. And, you know, that no one is ever allowed to touch me again, besides you. He took a deep breath and I could tell he was starting to calm down. I motioned for my father to continue. The other demand, since we would not allow him to sleep with you, is that you come and talk to them, alone. And they want all the cameras off, so no one can spy on what was being said in the room. No. Absolutely not, Justin stated with finality. I will not allow them to be alone with my mate. It is not safe. We know, son. We understand where you are coming from. We had already told them no on both counts. We knew that neither of you would agree to that. Now, to the original question, did they release anything that could help us identify the traitors? I sat there, thinking for a moment. There was one thing, but I thought I was dreaming it. Maybe it would be worth mentioning. Well, not really. They tried to avoid talking about the traitors in the room with me. However, there were a few times they would slip up when they thought that I was still knocked out. At one point, I heard them talking about two traitors. One of them they had identified as a woman and the other was a man who was in a position of power. Since I had heard that, when I spoke to Justin, that was why I told him to be careful who he trusted and not to allow anyone he did not trust explicitly into the meetings. As I finished talking, a jarring pain shot through my abdomen. Here we go again. Chapter 90. Justin's POV caught Calia doubled over in pain in my arms. Before I could even react, I could smell her overwhelming scent perfuming the room. I could feel Ares starting to lose control the more that her scent is perfuming the room. This was the risk we took when we kept giving her the heat suppression pills. She was in an immense amount of pain. I tried to stand while holding her and she cried out in pain. Before I knew it, the Alpha and the King had to hold back multiple wolves at a time from trying to enter the room, and Michael had Oliver by the throat, refusing to let him near Calia. I could tell that Oliver was fighting his instincts. He glanced at me apologetically as his wolf took back over, his eyes blazing black. Ares, we need to calm down. We have to make sure she is safe first. He whimpered in my head, but I watched as he shook his big, furry head and tried to focus on the task at hand. All unmated pack members are to return to their houses and are not allowed to leave until told to do so. I need all mated pack members to report to the pack hospital. The Alpha commanded through the link. Since he started it out by using his Alpha command, I had to fight the will to follow the command. Every inch of my body was screaming at me to submit to my alpha, but I was refusing it. I needed to get Calia to safety. Fighting it was not as hard as it would have been before Calia marked me, but I was still having to fight to disobey an exact order to report to the pack hospital and remain there to help fight off any of the unmated males. I know he did not have the intention of trying to force me to stay, but since he made a generalized command, it was meant to wash over me too. I finally managed to get Calia out of the room, only to get nearly tackled by Aziel. This is the last thing I wanted to deal with. Aziel came at me and I raised my foot to kick him in the groin. He dropped to the ground and I was able to rush off, so that I could take care of my mate. I made it outside the hospital and let out a small sigh of relief. The pack house is near. Calia lets out another loud scream, doubling over in my arms, clutching her abdomen. The pain won't go away, she cries. I know, baby, I know. We are almost there, just a little bit further. I could see the unmated pack members and some of them were trying to fight the Alpha's command, while the mated pack members were trying to keep them away from Calia and I. Right as I was about to get inside the pack house, she moans, her scent intensifying. I had to pause and stop myself from taking her right now, on the front steps of the pack house. I know I made that joke to Oliver about the free peep show, but I was not being serious. I started walking up the stairs and I finally reached Alpha's floor. I turned to the entrance to our floor, flipped the glass mechanism, and pressed the big red button. I sighed in relief when I heard the first telltale signs of the groans from the roller shutters. I barely had the mindset to link the Alpha and tell him we had made it to our floor and the roller shutters are now in place. I barely heard when the Alpha lifted the command on the pack. I could hear banging on the metal doors. I am glad to know that the metal door and the roller shutters do wonder on keeping others out. She cries out again and I look down at her, her scent overwhelming me again. I rushed to the room, leaving the door wide open and laid her on the bed. I didn't have the patience to take off all these layers, so I just shredded them off both of us. Hope she didn't like those jeans. I moaned the moment my release hit, continuing to FK her, causing her to cry out in ecstasy. I could feel her heat abating and her body temperature was slowly returning to normal. Soon, the room was filled with nothing but the sounds of our moans, her cries of pleasure. This was how the next 3 days went. We would have a small break between each round of heat. Each round of her heat became worse for her as she was racked with pain. We FKD on every surface in this room. The bathroom, the bed, floor, dresser, and at one point, we even managed to FK in the hallway. Chapter 91. Calia's POV. I rolled over in bed and tried to stretch my muscles, realizing how sore I was. It hurts to move. I tried to roll out of the bed and Justin grabbed me around the waist, pulling me back to him, encasing me in his strong grip. No, stay. Sleep more. The world will be waiting in a few hours, Justin mumbled, with sleep evident in his voice. I giggled under my breath. He is right. The world could wait, but I was anxious to get up. I had a lot to take care of today, including a conversation with Justin that he wouldn't like. It is either we talk about it or I do it anyway and ask for his forgiveness later, but I would rather ask him and talk about it before I did anything rash. We have barely had any sleep the past 3 days. When my heat was in full swing, it was like Justin and I were constantly on top of each other. I am sure that we had S*X in every part of this room and a good portion of the hallway too. The heat is unpredictable. You never know when it is going to flare up until the pain starts and the arousal starts flooding the room. Each point when my heat abated, Justin would receive a mind link from the head Omega, Nancy, informing us that she was coming up with food. There is a slot in each of the doors that opens that allows for food or other necessities to be pushed through. So, that was how we received our food for the past 3 days. During the time when my heat was abated, we would spend that time eating, talking, sleeping, or showering. Granted, there was only a couple of hours between each round if we were lucky. I rolled, so that I was facing Justin and kissed his lips. He moaned as he parted his lips, causing me to laugh. "Baby, we need to get up. I hate to break it to you, but this room and the hallway needs to be aired out. It reeks of a brothel in here." He grunted, rolling onto his back, pulling me on top of him. He pushed my head down on his chest. "Sleep," he mumbled. "Fine, we are doing this the hard way." I rolled off him and he grunted, rolling back on his side to continue sleeping. "We cannot play this way," I laughed silently to myself. I walked out into the hallway being as silent as possible. I walked into what is normally my parents' room, or just reserved for the Alpha and his Luna, and went to the kitchenette. I looked under one of the cabinets until I found what I was looking for. He is going to be so pissed off. I walked back to our room and crawled back on Justin's lap, which thinking about it now probably was not going to be a very good idea. I took the 2 metal lids and banged them together. Justin's eyes flew open and he started flailing around. He sat up quickly and I did not have time to react before I was thrown off him, landing on the floor. I was laughing hysterically to the point I was struggling to breathe. Justin scowled at me, causing me to laugh even harder. I was laughing so hard that I accidentally peed on myself. "This wasn't funny," he grumbled. It took me several more minutes to calm down my breathing and stop laughing. I got up from the ground and hesitantly walked towards Justin, who was fully sitting up with his legs hanging off the side of the bed. I stood right in front of him, wringing my hands in front of me and gave him my best sad/remorseful face. "Baby, could you ever forgive me? I don't want you to be mad at me." Justin laughed at my half-sincere apology. He wrapped his hands around my waist and pulled me towards him. "I could never stay mad at you," he said as he nuzzled his face into my neck. The moment his mouth touched my mark, I moaned hornily. I smacked him in the head. "Hey, now! Stop that! We don't have time for any of that. We have to get ready." He laughed as I stepped back out from between his legs. He stood up, stretching his muscles. I grabbed a pair of leggings, one of his shirts, a pair of black lingerie, and a matching bra before heading to the bathroom to shower. Both of us showered quickly before we took the time to get ready. I was waiting on the bed for Justin to finish getting ready as I contemplated what to say to him. I wanted to talk to him before we in front of everyone. I knew this was going to turn into a fight. He is dead set about not putting me in danger and everything about what I wanted to do screamed danger, but it was the only way I could see. "Hey, babe," I called as he was finishing shaving, "can we talk about something before we go to meet up with everyone?" He said something that sounded like an agreement. He walked out of the bathroom and came over to the bed and sat next to me. "What's wrong, my queen?" he asked. I was quiet for a moment, thinking about the best way to approach this topic. I did not want to upset him. "So, about the rogues, I know you do not want me in the same vicinity with them, but if they tell us who the traitor is without us having to go through and interrogate my full pack, then would it not be worth it? Even if it meant that I had to deal with them by myself for a few, short minutes." He was quiet for a moment, which was something that worried me. He slowly shook his head. "Baby, please don't go there with me. I want to know who the traitors are as much as you do, but I will not have it done at the risk of your health and safety. I don't care." We can interrogate the entire pack for all I care, but I don't want you alone with them. They had you for several days, torturing you. I am not leaving you alone with them. I sighed softly. I knew he was going to say this. Fine, if you will not allow me to be in the room with them alone. What if I bring King Lucas guard, Ashton? The one that had the ability to make him invisible? What if he was in there, but gave the illusion that I was all alone? He growled. I can't believe he actually growled at me. No. Baby, I do not care who is in the room with you, but I am not able to physically handle it if you go to him. I need you safe. I need to know you are safe. I cannot do that if I am not in the room with you. I know they will be chained up and weakened, but there are other ways of hurting someone. We underestimated them once. I am not doing it again, especially when it comes to your safety, baby. You cannot and will not ask that of me. Shouldn't you just be grateful that I decided that I would have this conversation with you, besides the alternative of sneaking out and going to do it on my own? I was at least going to have an adult conversation with you, baby. I am trying to get you to understand my side, I growled at him. Why can't you see that I do not need to be watched or babysat? I am perfectly capable of going on my own. They would not be the first rogues that I have been alone with. They will not be the first ones that I have questioned or tortured. I need this, so that I can move on. Can't you see? I have to be able to move on, and right now, I am just not able to, at least not when I know they are right here, under my nose, and I still have no way to put them in their place. I need to know they are done. Ever since they attacked me, I have never felt truly safe. No matter where I was at or who I was with. I was constantly having to look over my shoulders, never being able to fully relax for fear that they were going to pop up. Baby, please understand where I am coming from. I love you, I really do, but this is something that I need for myself too. I watched as his eyes softened. My queen, I did not realize you were feeling all of this. I know that it is hard to feel safe with them roaming free, but I don't have the peace of mind to allow you to go in there alone. I went through those days when you were not by my side. In the beginning, I did not know you were okay. All I could tell was that they were trying to touch you while you were in your heat. I know what I am feeling is nothing compared to what you were feeling and going through, but please, for my sanity, I know that realistically there is no way for them to actually harm you now, but I cannot sit here and idly let you walk into the wolves' den, and even if I did and allowed someone to go in there with you, it would not be the same as if I was in there. And as for your other point, I am incredibly grateful that you trusted me enough to make sure that we had this conversation, instead of making any rash decisions that would have ended with anyone worrying about you rashly, plus you never know what they might try to do to off you. I could tell he was frustrated and upset, but I truly did not feel safe, and I am not sure if I ever will unless I am physically present when they are killed. I understood where he was coming from and I could understand where his anger was, but, shouldn't this be my decision? Baby, we clearly aren't going to agree on this, so how about a compromise? I will agree to have Ashton and you in the room, but you have to use some decentator and you will have to covered in Ashton's ability. You can't do anything though unless I am in pain or danger. I want them to have the illusion that I am alone and vulnerable. They will not speak unless they think that I am vulnerable and alone. It is a game for them. We have to play the game to get what we want with them. Please agree with this, my love? I am ready for this to be behind us. I am ready to be able to move on. He closed his eyes for a moment and I could tell that he was struggling to remain calm. Fine, I will agree to that, but the moment that they say something inappropriate to you, the moment that I feel your fear and scared, I will come forward. I will not have them harming my mate and upsetting her. I give zero about how strong you are, I need you to be safe and happy. I know that you are strong and resilient and that you do not need a man to take care of you. You have proven that to me over and over again, but please for my sake? Please allow me to take care of you, allow me to be there for you and to, overall, help with your trauma and pain. At least we were finally getting somewhere. He was slowly coming around, and if I had to have him in that room to give him some peace of mind, then at this point I would do it. I know that I am stubborn at times and all he truly wants to do is protect me, but sometimes I don't need protection, but for him, I will try to allow him to take care of me in the way that he wants to. Fine, baby. I will agree. The moment the fear sets in, I will allow you to step forward and help take care of me. Just promise the final blow will be delivered by me. He nodded his head, pulling me in his arms and squeezing me tightly. Of course, my queen. I never would dream of taking that away from you. You ready to go take care of business now? I nodded my head. First, just give me a few minutes to calm down. Is that okay? Chapter 92. We had come to an agreement that would benefit both of us, even though I still believed that he should have trusted me enough to allow me to be there alone with them. I understood his reasoning, but that did not make it any easier. Don't get me wrong, I would be happy if I never had to see the bastards ever again, but I needed this closure and I needed to know who the traitors were. Unfortunately, they probably won't tell anyone, I might be the only one that could get it out of them. I guess we had better go and get this over with. I finally stand up and Justin holds his hand out for me to take. I grabbed his hand and we started to walk out of the room. I used my hand when we reached the door that would take us downstairs, forgetting that the roller shutters and other mechanisms were still in place. We had it designed so that whenever someone's heat was ending, only the ranked pack members were able to unlock it with their handprint. Justin, unfortunately, does not have that clearance yet, since he hasn't been fully accepted and we have not had my alpha ceremony. I laid my hand on the scanner, allowing it to scan my hand, so we could leave the alpha floor. I need to go ahead and ask my dad about going ahead and giving you access to all this extra. He laughed. I know you are just tired of doing it, but I, of course, wouldn't mind helping you. I am ready to take on any pack duties that you are willing to pass on to me. He is always such an eager beaver. I had linked my father on our way here and he decided that we would go ahead and meet inside of the interrogation room, inside of the dungeons. We made our way there and as soon as we were outside the room, I opened the door and we were met with the pungent smell of sweat, death, blood, and decay. The moment we entered the interrogation room, Oliver looked at us with a smirk on his face and said, "You two have been gone for so long that I nearly forgot what you looked like." As soon as he finished speaking, I flipped him the middle finger and told him to FK off. Everyone laughed heartily, while I glared at him. Justin wrapped his arms around me, pulling me tightly to him. He kissed the top of my head. "I will get him back later, my queen." I smiled at Justin and reached up to kiss him. First thing first, we have tried every method possible to get any information out of these bastards. They have refused to talk to anyone, except for Calia. Clearly, we were not going to give in to all their demands. Calia, I have had the interrogation room set up for you. I even had them equip it with your favorite knife, Whispering Death. At the mention of my carving knife, several people looked at me with slight concern. What? You have never named your favorite knife before? King Lucas shook his head and laughed. Michael and Oliver were looking at me like I was insane. The current ranked members were used to this with me. When there are particularly difficult rogues, prisoners of wars, or just because I am in a mood, I bring out my favorite carving knife, Whispering Death. My father and Beta Damien were the ones that came up with the name for my knife. Shortly after my first round with the interrogations room, when I first discovered the dungeons, Sky had released one of the rogues because she likes to play with her victims. Sky sometimes gets out of control and particularly enjoys taking control while interrogating. Sometimes I indulge her wishes and other times, I tell her no. I know, that sounds really harsh, but my wolf is vindictive. This particular rogue had called her a filthy alpha whore and, well, Sky did not take well to that at all, so after she was done interrogating him, she decided that she was going to have a little fun with him. She let him go and told him that she would give him a 10-second head start. She picked up the knife that she had used to carve him up and she waited 10 seconds. She did not even chase after him. She simply held the knife in my throwing hand and aimed it for the center of the guy's back. All you heard was the whistle of the knife flying through the air before it hit its target. The guy did not stand a chance. My father and the beta were watching this exchange take place and they even took bets on how I would catch him. Both were wrong. They were not expecting me to just throw the knife and call it a day. They had told me it was like I was the Death Whisperer. Apparently, the guy would never have seen it coming. From that day forward, my carving knife has been called Whispering Death. Typically, I use it for most interrogations that I am a part of. Justin gives me an inquisitive look before he tells me, "I need to hear the story behind your knife." I chuckled. I figured someone was going to ask me about the story behind my knife. I figured that I might as well tell the rest of the people in the room. I gave them the simplified version and my dad and Beta Damien would occasionally interject when I was talking about the rogue that I had thrown the knife at. Justin looked at me when I finished. "Remind me to never piss Sky off," he said as he kissed my neck. I shrugged my shoulders. "I think you are probably safe from her wrath." I looked at my father. "Are they already set up in different rooms for me?" My father nodded his head. "What is your plan, Calia?" "As long as it is okay with King Lucas, I am going to employ the services of his warrior, Ashton. He will go into the room with me, using his ability. He will, also, be using his ability on Justin." Justin was adamant that I do not go into the room on my own. Really, he was just adamant that I do not go into the room without him. Justin, and I will make sure that Ashton knows too, and will not be allowed to intervene unless I need them to. Justin has already promised me that he would not intervene in the interrogation room. Everyone else will have to remain outside to watch on the camera that is set up in the room. Lastly, I want both of them to be in separate rooms. They cannot feed off each other if they are in separate rooms. King Lucas nodded his head. "I will go ahead and call Ashton down here." My father walked up to me and placed his hands on my shoulders. "Are you sure that you are okay with doing this?" I nodded my head. "Yes. I need the closure too. If I am not there when they are killed, then I will never be able to fully move on. I will have to constantly think that I need to be looking over my shoulder." The king had already debriefed Ashton before he had entered the room. Now, we were preparing to enter the interrogation room. I stopped at the door, my heart was racing and my palms were sweating. I stood there trying to calm my racing heart. Justin placed his hand on my shoulder and squeezed. "I will be right here. I am going to be behind you the entire time," he linked. I nodded my head and opened the door to deal with the youngest of the brothers, Titan. Titan looked up the moment I walked into the room. A broad grin spread across his face. "Look at who finally decided to come have some fun with me. Did you finally realize that your piece of mate does not do it for you, not like I could?" Chapter 93. The next 2 chapters will contain something that upset you. You may skip the next 2 chapters. Titan looked up the moment I walked into the room. A broad grin spread across his face. Look who finally decided to come have some fun with me. Did you finally realize that your piece of mate does not do it for you, not like I could? And why do you think I would ever come to you? I sneered at him. I was not letting him goad me into this. I am the only one that will be asking the questions here. I walked to the table and picked up Whispering Death. You have two options while you are here. 1. You can either answer my questions correctly the first time or my favorite knife and I will get to have some fun. I can guarantee you that you do not want to get up close and personal with Whispering Death. If you decide to cooperate with me, then I might consider allowing you to have a simple death, or not. It would really just depend on my mood. I threw the knife in the air and caught it by the blade. I watched as he paled and gulped loudly. First, which of my pack members has been helping you and passing you information? He was silent, as if he was contemplating the best course of action and whether to answer me honestly. How about you come over here and give me a kiss, sweet cheeks, and then I might be persuaded to tell you. I scoffed, disgusted that he would say something like that. I could sense Justin's anger as it was rising. I knew he was going to have a hard time in this room. I took my knife and swiped it across his cheek. Did I forget to tell you that I would not be making any negotiations? You either tell me or you greatly suffer. I am fine with either solution. I will get swipey on your face and you will die. That is, after all, the end solution. It is a win-win for me. I shrugged my shoulders. I contemplated for another minute before continuing. Let me think, there was something else that I forgot to tell you. Oh, I remember. By the way, there is something special about my wonderful knife. When the blade was made, it was infused with monkshood. So, every time that I use it on someone, it is going to hurt. You know, to keep your natural abilities from healing you. To make everything even better, the Alpha was kind enough to douse it in some extra monkshood. You know, to make sure that you are getting the full effect of what my baby can do. His face paled even further, if that was even possible. I am not playing with him today. And when it comes to his older brother, I will not be playing with him either. However, I think that I will allow Justin the pleasure of dealing with the other one. I can feel that Justin is itching to get his hands on them. Since they only had him chained to the chair, I decided that I was going to ask for some assistance. Michael, Oliver. I called through the link, can both of you come help me? The moment that the words left my mouth, the two of them walked in the door and I asked them to strap him to the wall, so we could begin having some fun. The moment that they unchained him to move him, he began thrashing and trying to fight back. I stood to the back of the room, waiting for them to finish getting situated, deciding only to step on him if it was deemed necessary. Michael finished stripping the bastard, while Oliver worked to get him strapped to the wall. Once they finished, they both saluted me and sauntered out of the room. I chuckled under my breath. What am I going to do with those two? I slowly walked up to the bastard. Once I reached him, I trailed the knife down his chest. Are you ready to answer me now? He stared silently ahead, refusing to speak. Fine, have it your way. I guess I will play my own little game of hangman, using your chest. I shrugged my shoulders. I took the knife and dug it into his chest, right about his left pectoral. I listened as his screams rang out, as I continued to carve the letter R into his chest. Once I finished, I pulled out my knife and inspected my handiwork. I don't think it was deep enough. Let me go a little deeper on the next letter. I continued carving the word rapist into his chest, his screams bringing me immense joy. I smiled to myself at everything that I had planned for this bastard. After his final scream rang out, I finally spoke, "Are you ready to speak yet?" He finally spoke. One of the traitors was a girl. She heard about what happened to you and that we were responsible for it. She said that she wanted you to pay for what you did to her. She said that if you were taken from the pack, then everything would be fine. That is interesting. There is only one female in the pack that comes to mind with that description. I glanced to the far wall of the room where Justin was. I could feel his anger was burning hot. Caught, I know what you are thinking, but I don't think that she is capable of doing something like that. I don't think she would betray her pack just out of jealousy. We will see. Simple way to find out. We will just use the Alpha command on her and then, to be sure, I will ask the king to use his command on her, but my command should work just fine. And what did she tell you? What information did she pass to you? He shook his head no, not wanting to tell me anything. Fine, suit yourself. Go for him next, caught. Sky screamed in my head. I swear she is more sadistic than I am. I sauntered back up to him until I was standing right in front of him. I grabbed him and I was disgusted at how easily he was erect. I knew you couldn't resist me, baby. He was cut off by my hand wrapping around his throat, as hard as I could. I watched as his face turned purple before I spoke next. Don't you ever talk to me like that, you low-life piece of shit. Who in their right mind would want your goddess? Do you even remember the names of all your victims? Everyone that you and your brothers pushed yourselves on? What about their cries and pleas for you to stop? I reached back down and grabbed him and, with one swipe of whispering death, I chopped off him. He screamed as the blood gushed out of him, begging me to stop. Did you stop when you laid your filthy hands upon their bodies? When you took their precious innocence? No, I didn't think so. I will not stop until you're dead. Now, what did Anna give you on my pack and me? I screamed in his face. I could feel my anger rising, but I was not sure if it was just my anger or a combination of what I was feeling and Justin. I could feel my very small hold on my sanity slipping, the beginning signs of an anxiety attack starting to engulf me. Sky was pushing herself forward, trying to stop the pain from engulfing me. The knife slipped from my hands and clattered to the ground, causing a loud echo to resound throughout the room. We need answers from him, Sky quietly said as she continued pushing forward. Let me finish this for you. Come on, caught. Relax. I could feel Justin getting closer, walking up behind me quietly. He placed a hand on my shoulder and squeezed it gently. I am right here, my queen. It is okay. Let me know if you need me or someone else to take over. They can't hurt you anymore, my love. I will never allow another person to lay their filthy hands on you. I took a deep breath. I can do this. I pushed Sky back and told her that I had this. That I was okay. I looked back at the rogue and his face was pale. He was still screaming and bleeding. I bent down and picked back my knife again. I am done talking. I don't care anymore. I don't need answers from him anymore. I will figure out the answers when I questioned her, using my Alpha command, so she could not lie. I used my knife and stabbed into his stomach, pushing as hard as I could, to make the wound even deeper. I slid the knife vertically across his stomach, where I could see his insides. I walked back to the table and picked up some silver, monk's hood, and water hemlock, not paying attention to the feel or smell of my flesh burning. It was like I became desensitized to the pain. I had locked my emotions in a tight box and I refused to let them out. I first took the silver and jammed it into the gaping hole. His screams were agonizing, but I enjoyed them. They made me feel alive. I took the monk's hood and the water hemlock and shoved it inside the hole I made in his stomach. I watched as his flesh sizzled and burned. I partially shifted so that I had claws and shoved my claw into his stomach until I reached his intestines. I made sure that his intestines were coated with the poisons, so that it would hurt even more. I then walked back to the table and took a big, long pole and walked back to him. Ashton, Justin, go ahead and show yourselves. Will you two turn him around for me for a second? They both obliged my simple command and turned him around. The moment that his back was facing me, I took the long pole and shoved it in him, causing him to scream murder. Doesn't feel good to have something forcefully shoved inside of you, now does it? He wasn't able to answer me from the pain that he was in. Flip him back around. They instantly obeyed my command. The moment that he was facing me, I forced his mouth open, grabbed his tongue and sliced my knife through it. I threw his tongue on the ground before spitting in his face. I used one of my claws and dug it into his chest, with enough force for me to be able to reach where his shriveled up heart was. His mouth opened to scream, but no sound came out. I gripped his heart and he moved his hand to grip mine, trying to pull it out of him. I squeezed more and yanked it from his body, crushing it in my hand as I watched the light leave his eyes. The moment that I had crushed it, I had dropped it to the ground and then I proceeded to drop to the ground. I could feel the wetness on my cheeks as I stared at nothing, but everything at the same time. I could hear the door opening in the distance and someone dropped right next to me. Justin was standing in front of me. Justin wrapped his arms around my shoulders and pulled me to him. Someone else was rubbing my back. All the emotions that I had kept inside that box finally escaped and the sobs escaped me. I sat on the floor in Justin's arms for what felt like ever, even though it was probably only 30 minutes. It is okay, my love. Let it all out. Justin whispered to me, repeatedly. 30 minutes later, my sobs had slowed to hiccups. The king and my father walked into the room. Calia, we know you need time to process, but do you know who he said was the first traitor? I nodded my head slowly as Justin let out a low growl. Anna Wazinski. Chapter 94. Justin's POV. I watched as Calia tortured the rogue. As he started taunting her, I not only felt, but saw as her self-control snapped. I knew that she had a dark side to her, but I never thought that it would be like this. Ashton looked at me and raised an eyebrow when Calia castrated him. Remind me to never piss off your mate, he whispered. I chuckled. He had a point. She was scary when she was mad or in this case wanting revenge. I walked closer to her as she shut her emotions away and placed a block, so I couldn't feel what she was feeling. I placed my hands on her shoulders and gently squeezed, hoping to reassure her. When she finally killed him, she collapsed to the ground. I pulled her into my arms and just held her as she sobbed. I knew no matter what she said or the facade that she put up that this was going to be hard on her. It gave her an outlet to truly release her trauma and the pain she was feeling. When I told her that I wanted to be in the room with her, part of the reason was because I was worried about what they would try to do to her, but, also, I wanted to be there for her because I had a gut feeling that something like this would happen to her. They broke my loving mate, before she had the chance to know what true love and compassion was. The only thing that I am grateful for is that this entire experience has allowed her to grow into the strong woman that she is today. Even though, I think had this not happened to her, then she would have still been strong. Her being raped would never be okay, no matter what way you try to make it make sense. I would never wish it on my worst enemy. They say typically everything happens for a reason and that it is all meant to shape the person that you become. If this was meant to happen to her, then there was something wrong with fate and the moon goddess. Sometimes it is hard to wrap my head around what the goddess has allowed her children to do. You would think that she would smite those that choose wrong, but, like my parents used to tell me, the moon goddess always give us the choice. We can choose to choose right or we can choose wrong, the ultimate choice is up to us. Instead of saying anything that I was thinking, I instead whispered, "It is okay, my love. Let it all out." And she did. We sat there for 30 minutes with her sobbing until her sobs eventually became quiet hiccups. Oliver rubbed her back, while Michael, Ashton, and the ranked members cleaned the interrogation room and disposed of his body. The King and the Alpha did not come back until the room was cleaned and the body disposed of to speak to Calia about what he had divulged about the first traitor. I was shocked when he had perfectly described Anna, but I was having a hard time believing that she held that much of a grudge about Calia being my mate. She never seemed like the type to go crazy. As soon as Calia had told them who he was referring to about the first traitor, Michael had turned his glare onto me. "This is all your fault," he said. The Alpha turned and looked at him. "One of you explain what the two of you are talking about." Michael and I looked at each other and then I glanced down at Calia. I knew what Michael was going to say. I knew he was fuming about the entire situation, especially if she turned out to be the traitor. Michael and I explained everything from the moment that he had caught me Anna, after the conversation we had had about Calia, when she had shot me down. Goddess, it feels like a lifetime ago. I could feel the hurt radiating from the bond. I tried to reassure her and calm her with my touch, but I could tell that it was not doing much for her. She did not know that Anna and I had. I knew she suspected it, but to have to hear how her brother had walked in on us, that is different. Even if it was before the bond took effect, it does not mean that it hurts any less. I squeezed her tightly in my arms. "You know you are the only one for me." She meant nothing to me. She still means nothing to me, my love. I whispered to her through our bond. I leaned down and gave her a small kiss, not caring who was in the room or watching us. My main priority was to reassure my mate. When I pulled away, she had a small smile on her face. "I know you had a past, Justin. It is just hard hearing about you being with other women, that is all. I know that you are all mine now." Once Michael was finished with the story, Calia looked at her father. "I want to wait to bring Anna in. I want to first find out who the other traitor is and bring them in together. First, I will use the full weight of my Alpha command to get them to answer truthfully, and then I would like it if King Lucas could also use his command, just so we could make sure they are really telling the truth and not finding a way to fight my command." The Alpha agreed to her wish when it came to do with the traitors. "Are you going to go back in for the other one?" he asked me. She nodded her head, but deflected to me, keeping eye contact with me as she spoke. "If it is all right, I will be in the room, but I think I will leave the second to Justin, if that is all right." The Alpha nodded his head. "Of course, I would do that for you, babe." I whispered into her hair. "Would you like for us to have Ashton shield you or for him to be in the room with you?" the king asked her. "He doesn't have to shield me, but I would appreciate it if maybe he could be in there just in case we need help or he gets too rowdy." The one we are about to deal with was the more violent one of the three. He is the oldest and his name is Tristan. He liked to indulge in the more rougher forms and he was the most abusive when I was in their care. I stiffened as she finished talking about the oldest triplet. This was going to be fun. Well, fun for me. Hell for him. No one puts their hands on my mate and gets away with it, especially ones that enjoyed torturing my baby. She deserved better, she deserves her revenge. Him, on the other hand, he deserves pain. A bunch of pain, which I plan to deliver. Christmas came early this year and I am Santa. I don't think he is going to enjoy his gift from Santa. How did I get paired with the crazy human? Aries joked. SHHH. You know you were thinking the same thing too, you are more sadistic than I am. I argued back. Aries just shrugged his shoulders. My wolf thinks he is hilarious. The Alpha had the second rogue placed in a different interrogation room, but they had moved the weapons and various devices into this room, including her special knife. We walked over to the next interrogation room and I stopped outside of the room, grabbing Calia's hand. No one will think differently of you if you decided to stay out of the room, you can watch from here if that makes you more comfortable. She glanced up at my face and turned to face me, wrapping her arms around me. I love that you care about me and are constantly checking in with me to make sure that I am okay. I will be fine, love. I want to be in there with you. I kissed the top of her forehead and then nodded my head. I opened the door and the first thing I saw was the rogue already chained to the wall. I guess they decided to go ahead and make it easier on us this time. We walked in the room and I could feel Ashton's presence as he glided in behind us. The rogue smirked at me, before noticing that Calia was next to me. How dare you bring another man with you to see me, he screamed at her. I was in front of him in a flash, my hand wrapped around his throat, squeezing the life out of him. Let's get one thing clear. You do not get to talk to my mate. You talk to her, you look at her the wrong way, you have indecent thoughts about her and you will deal with me. I took a step away from him, releasing his neck. Now, I have some questions. You either answer the questions, or don't. I don't care. Just know, the more of my questions that go unanswered, the more violent and painful your death will be. I would tell you that you could ask your brother, what was his name again, Tyler? No, that was the other brother, maybe it was Triton? Nah, that wasn't it. Oh yeah, now I remember, Titan. Anyway, I would tell you to ask him, but he has already met his end and I must say that it was pretty gruesome. He screamed his rage. You! What did you do to my brother? You whore, just wait until I am out of here. You will become my bit. I didn't let him finish his sentence as I picked up one of the carving knives on the table and jabbed it into his side, twisting it once I stabbed him. His scream of pain fueled me, fueled the anger that was burning through my veins. I enunciated my next words to him carefully, just in case he was too stupid to understand what I was saying. You will not speak to my mate like that ever again. If you want to address someone, you will only address me. He was silent after that, sending glares my way. Now that we are on the same page, your little brother was able to tell us who the first traitor was before he was killed. Now I need to know the second traitor. Who is it? Who betrayed their pact to help the likes of scum like you? Chapter 95. He laughed before spitting in my face. Why would I tell you that? Maybe you should ask yourself who your mate has pissed off enough that they want her out of the pack forever. Your traitor did not want us to keep Calia to ourselves. No, instead, they wanted us abuse her, and then kill her before delivering the body back to you. They wanted her to hurt. They wanted you to hurt. I could tell Calia was starting to struggle. She placed her walls high, but she didn't place them quick enough. I was able to get a read on her emotions before she was able to place her walls up. I was silently sending her strength through the bond, praying to the goddess that it worked. That was not the answer I was looking for. I picked up an axe and used it to slice off his arm. His screams of pain echoed through the room. Now, Let us try this again. Who was your other informant? He still refused to answer, so I looked at the table to see on my best course of action. Perfect. I picked up the pears of anguish and flipped him around. I used my knife to slice his pants off him. Once his back was to me, I shoved the pears of anguish up him. I grabbed the remote control that went with the device. I activated the device and turned it onto the first level. He screamed in pain as the device began to spread from inside him. While this method won't kill him, it does hurt. His anus is going to continue spreading until he tells me who the other traitor was. Now, who is the traitor? I asked him as I turned the dial up, skipping level 2 and going straight to level 3. Once again, his screams ripped through the room, echoing off the walls. It is one of your elders, he screamed. Stop, stop this. I heard Calia's gasp and then felt her rising anger. I am sure we were thinking of the same elder that has tried to get her taken out of her position and has fought her the entire time. I laughed at the rogue. Did you stop when any of the women you raped begged you to stop? Did you stop when they screamed in pain when you took away their innocence? This is what happens to rapist. I guess you should be lucky that it is me and not her doing this. You should have seen what she did to your brother. I think someone took pictures of his mangled body, so that you can see what she did to him. He looked at me in disgust. I could see his eyes welling with tears from the pain. Now, back to what you said. Which elder was it? How did you know it was an elder? He showed us his pack identification. He had salt and pepper hair. He claimed he was one of the high-ranking elders and that he would give us all information that we wanted. We just had to make sure that Calia died in the end. He did not want to ever deal again. He paid us 10 grand, each. That narrowed it down to 2 of the elders. I could hear Calia's heart racing as she tried to piece together which one it was. What was the man's name? I asked, turning the dial up to the highest settings. His screams were the only answer that I received. I grabbed Calia's favorite knife, holding up, silently asking her permission to use it. She nodded her head and silently took a seat on top of the table that is in the room, watching me with curious eyes. I walked up to him. I watched his face carefully and as soon as I grabbed him, his face paled and he started stutter. No. PPPL please don't. They wanted it. All of them wanted it. They all wanted a piece of me. He looked at Calia and continued screaming, admit that you wanted it. Admit that you wanted me, admit it. As he said the last word, I took the knife and cut off his screams were torturous, ringing through the room. Calia walked closer to him, taking her knife from me along the way. She gripped his face in her hands. I watched as her eyes flashed, blazing with fury, and I could tell that Sky was now in the front seat with her. How dare you insinuate that I enjoyed anything that you did to me? How dare you insinuate that any of your victims enjoyed it? You sick? Are you blind? What cues clued you into me enjoying any of what you and your sick brothers did to me? You took my innocence. I nearly rejected my mate because of what you did. How could someone love me when I was broken? I was broken because of you. That is not something to be proud of. The entire time she was screaming at him, he was smiling widely. I watched her hands shake as she waved the knife around. I took a step back to narrowly dodge the knife during one of the moments that she was waving it around. When she finished speaking, she took whispering death and stabbed him in the eye, twisting the knife into his eye, before she pulled out his eye. He screamed as he tried to break free from the chains, so that he could grab his eye that was gushing blood. Before I could wrap my arms around Calia, she took the knife and stabbed it into his other eye. She did the same thing before she pulled out his other eye. Since you are blind to what your actions caused, I went ahead and helped you, that way you can now say you are legally blind. She took a step back, her entire body shaking. I stepped forward and pried the knife from her hands before wrapping my arms around her waist tightly, allowing my touch and scent to calm her. I got you, my queen. I love you. I love you too, she said quietly, before turning around and walking out of the room. I linked Oliver and Michael, asking them to keep an eye on her while I finished up with this bastard. I felt Ares push himself all the way forward, lending me his strength and the use of his aura. I can only imagine how brightly my eyes are shining with the combined force of my anger and Ares' anger. I pushed the full weight of my aura out, and even though he is a rogue and it should not have affected him fully, he cringed slightly. Name, now. I want to end this. The only thing that could be heard was his screams of pain. Fine, he doesn't want to answer, so I picked up the machete. For every time that I have to ask you the name of the informant, I will take a body part. Now, you can't see what weapon I am holding, so I will tell you. I am holding a machete that has a blade of about 21 inches. Speak. Now. And just to prove that I was not lying, I took the machete and sliced one of hands off his body. He screamed, his voice going hoarse at the end. Benjamin. Benjamin Walker, he whispered, his voice sore from the screaming. With those words, I used my claw to dig into his chest, ripping out his heart, before I took the machete and sliced his head cleanly off. I walked out of the room and I looked at everyone that was standing there observing. No one is to touch his body until I say so. Calia will need to see him to know he is truly dead. It will help her process everything. Those were my final words before I walked away to go make sure my mate is okay. Chapter 96. Calia's POV. I know I should have stayed. I get it. I really should have. When he opened his mouth and spat about me and all their other victims enjoying it when they assaulted them, I just lost it. I could no longer handle it. I was fine with what he said. In a sense, it was easy for me to ignore everything as it flowed off my back. But for him to imply that I enjoyed being raped, that anyone enjoys being assaulted, that took it too far. After I gouged out his eyes, I had to leave that room. I felt as if I was suffocating. It was getting harder to breathe. I hated leaving Justin in there alone, but I could feel an anxiety attack coming on and I didn't want Justin to have to stop anything to help me, which he would have done. I, also, did not want to appear weak. I didn't want the bastard to hear me breaking down. I did not want him to know that he was getting to me, so like a coward I ran. The moment I left the dungeon, I knew Justin sent someone after me. Oliver and Michael appeared as I exited the dungeon, both of them racing to catch up to me. Sky had been oddly quiet throughout the whole ordeal, so I truly felt alone. So many emotions were piling up. Michael walked up to me and wrapped me in his arms. The moment that his arms were around me, I started to sob. I placed my mental block up, so Justin would not feel the torrent of emotions rushing through me. When did I become so weak? I can't remember the last time that I cried this much or let my emotions overwhelm me. The last time was when I was assaulted, but after a week, I locked my feelings in a box and forgot about them. I tried to forget the whole ordeal. Maybe that was my problem. I never truly dealt with the emotions that I had after that week, not even in therapy. I always tried to avoid the topic. 5 minutes had passed and Michael still had his arms wrapped around me as I sobbed. Eventually, another pair of arms engulfed me and from the scent, I could tell that it was Elijah. "Shhh, it will be okay," Elijah whispered. I wasn't sure how long we stood there with Michael and Elijah trying their hardest to cheer me up. Eventually, I heard the door to the dungeons open and the scent of sandalwood and orange blossom drifted to me. Justin. Michael and Elijah both stepped back at the same time. The moment that they let go of me, I was in the arms of my mate. "Are you okay, my love?" I nodded my head, nuzzling his neck, trying my hardest to bask into his scent. "Now, I am," I whispered. We stood there in silence for what felt like hours, but it was probably only a few hours before he spoke again. "Baby, he is gone now," Justin quietly told me. "The body?" I asked. "Right where I left it. I knew that you would want to see it. It will bring you closure." I commanded no one to move it until I told them to. I turned ready to get this over with. We walked back through the dungeon to the interrogation rooms quickly. No one spoke the entire way back. As we made it back to the door, I noticed that everyone hadn't moved yet. I paused at the door and took a deep breath before pushing it open, and I gasped at what I saw. His blood had pretty much painted the entire room. I noticed his heart, crushed, lying on the ground and his head torn from his body. Justin wrapped his arms around me tenderly. "It is over, baby. You can now sleep peacefully, without ever worrying about them coming back for you." I turned to face him, hugging him tightly. "Thank you." As we walked out of the room, Justin told them that they could now clean up the room and that we would be waiting in the interrogation rooms that were in the pack house. We would go ahead and have the traitors brought to us. Justin refused to tell me who the other traitor was. He told me that it was going to be a shock as to who it was that had betrayed us. Several hours had passed and Justin had Aziel and Garrison collect the traitors and bring them in. He had them place bags over their heads because he did not want me to figure out who the other person was until he told me. The only thing he told me was that the second person was an elder. The only one that I thought held a vendetta against me was Christopher. His vendetta I thought was stupid. Christopher just hates that my brother wanted the title to go to me, instead of Elijah. He even went as far to argue that it would have even been better off if the title went to my beta instead, because women are only meant to control and run households. Women could never hold true responsibility within a pack. Hosh posh. That is all I can say every time that I hear that explanation. He was so full. Just because I am a woman does not mean that I am weaker or less than when it comes to a man. Clearly, since I could kick 3/4 of the male population in the pack, I could probably beat out of all them, but I am not full of myself to the point that I would ever admit that fact, just in case there was one person who would be able to outdo me. Everyone finally showed up to the conference room. We unanimously decided that we should start with Anna because she was the easiest. We knew the vendetta that she had against me. She was under the misguided assumption that just because she FK'd my mate a few times, that meant she held some kind of importance in his life. Justin was adamant that he be in the room with us. He said that he personally wanted to face who had tried to endanger my life and get me kicked. He told me that he did not care about what they had done in the past, but the only thing that had fazed him was what she tried to do to me now. He assured me there were no feelings present, so I would not have to worry about him trying to interfere with any judgment that my father, the king, or I made. We walked into the room and I motioned for Aziel to pull her bag off. They had strapped her legs and arms down, so that she couldn't harm anyone. Her eyes first landed on me before they shot to Justin, and her eyes instantly welled with tears. "Justin," she wailed, "I did not do whatever she has accused me of. I swear." Her shrieking was already annoying me and we hadn't done anything yet. I silently motioned for Aziel to smack her in the head. He looks at me and nods with the biggest grin on his face. I have been waiting forever for this opportunity, he linked to me gleefully. He smacks her in the head hard. Her head flew to the side. Shut up. You only speak when you are spoken to. I walked over to the table before taking a seat and we just stared at each other. Justin finally took a seat next to me. My father and the king remain standing. So this is how it is going to work. We are going to ask you a few questions and you will respond truthfully. Got it? She stares blankly ahead and doesn't answer. Apparently, we were going to start this out by doing it the hard way. Fine by me. I pushed my aura and allowed it to engulf the entire room. I said, do you understand? I watched as she tried to unsuccessfully fight my aura before she nodded her head, glaring at me. Much better. First things first, did you betray your pack and future alpha? She glared at me, fighting the question, before giving in and answering. You are not my alpha, whore. Justin was in front of her in an instant. He wrapped his hands around her throat as a warning. Watch how you talk to my mate. Normally, I don't like it when men place their hands on women, unprovoked, but if I am being honest, I find it hot that he is sticking up for me. Granted, I could handle her. She just really was not worth my time, though. She was not worth the unprovoked anger. I could feel Justin's anger, it was piping hot. It was ready to be released and Anna had just become his perfect target. I mean, she was warned to stay away, but I know the right and appropriate thing to do is to rein my mate in before he killed her. I placed my hand on his shoulder and squeezed him. I felt the tension leave his body. He dropped his hand from her and came to stand behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist and laying his head on top of mine. You see, Anna, I was not looking for you to tell me whether you believed that I was your alpha. No, I need to know if you betrayed your pack by conversing with the enemy, telling secrets, wishing harm on any pack member, whether it is a ranked member or an Omega. You know that is not tolerated in this pack. So, I will ask again. Did you betray your pack? I finished by pushing the full weight of my aura on her. I watched as she cringed in her seat before tilting her head towards me in submission. Yes, she whimpered. What exactly did you divulge to the enemy? I watched as she struggled to disobey the direct command, continuing to push my full aura on her, forcing her to answer. Your habits. Who you talk to, what you do, your routine, when you leave the pack, your weaknesses. I could feel my anger rising the more she talked. How long have you been working with them? Since right before the rogue attack, I was contacted by someone that told me that they could take you down, but I needed to help them. So, I told them what I knew. I roared in anger, slamming my fist down on the table. How dare you share pack secrets with the enemy? Do you have no shame? I know your parents would be ashamed of you doing this. Your father is a warrior and you thought it would be okay to risk the lives of pack members, just so the little princess could get what she wanted. I could feel my self-control slowly snapping with the more questions that I asked her. Before I could ask her another question, she started screaming back at me, her face turning red from her anger. How dare you call me names and insinuate that I have brought shame to my pack and family? I was doing them a favor by getting rid of you. You think that you are tough just because your brother was too much to keep his title? Newsflash! You are going to fail as the next alpha of this pact. You are right, I wanted those rogues to take you. I wanted them to hurt you. I wanted them to break you, break your will to live, so that you would do us all favor and die. My eyes flashed and I could tell they were glowing purple. I slowly walked towards her before I gripped her chin and pulled her face up to mine. You think it is okay for anyone to be assaulted, to have nightmares about what has been done to them? How would you like it if you were held down, against your will, and had 3 boys hold you down while they took what they wanted from you? How would you feel if they laughed in your face when you were begging them to stop touching you? It would hurt, wouldn't it? You would feel powerless. You know, I had considered going easy on you. I knew that you had a misguided infatuation with my mate. I was ready to forgive what you had done and give you a small punishment. Now, though, I can tell there is no remorse. You don't care about who you hurt to get what you want. You think Justin would have gone to you if I killed myself? If he never saw me again because those bastards had me? No, ma'am. He would not have. You are nothing to him. You were nothing to him. You had this idea of promises that he never gave you. For that, I truly feel sorry for you. I wish that you were shown some type of compassion. Maybe if you were shown compassion and what true love really was, we would not be in this situation. You will be sentenced to 100 lashes. The whip will be dunked every 10 lashes in monkshood and silver, and it will be ignited by hell fire. If you manage to survive that, you will be banished from the pack if I don't decide to kill you first. I watched as she looked at Justin pleadingly, but he didn't spare her a second glance. With my final words, I left the room. Justin, she screamed, I did this for us. He stopped for a moment and turned to face her. I was never yours to begin with. And then continued to follow me out of the room. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.